The knock was loud enough to be heard down the street. 3 sharp hits, not a neighborly tap. The kind of knock that tries to own the house before the door even opens. He stood still inside for a moment. He heard his dog growl low, the kind of growl that knows when something is wrong. He put a hand on the knob and opened the door slowly, letting the sunlight slice across the porch. 2 men stood there. Tactical vests. Sunglasses. Jeans. Clipboards and folded papers that shook in their hands, not from nerves but from performance. They looked like authority, but not long enough for someone who knew better. One of them lifted the paper, voice sharp. "You need to move out now. This property is under violation. Immediate eviction." The man on the porch didn't move. His eyes slid down the paper, not touching it, just letting his gaze measure every false corner. Wrong header. Wrong font. A seal that looked like it had been dragged from Google. His lips pressed into a thin line. "This your place?" the second man barked, stepping onto the first stair without invitation. He answered slowly, steady. "It is." "Not anymore," the first man said, shoving the paper forward like a sword. "You're trespassing. We've had multiple reports. Community board decision. Pack your things." He tilted his head slightly, sunlight brushing across his face, revealing the faintest smile that wasn't humor. "You're not police." That cracked them. The second man's jaw clenched. "We don't need to be police. We're authorized by the HOA. That's enough." The man's voice stayed calm. "Enough for what?" "To remove you. By force if necessary." Silence fell heavy. The porch wood creaked beneath his shoes. Somewhere across the street, a curtain moved. Neighbors were watching. Always watching when uniforms showed up, real or not. He leaned his shoulder against the doorframe, crossing his arms. "If you're going to evict me, show me the court order." The man with the sunglasses smirked, waving the paper again. "This is your order." He shook his head once. "That's a printout." "You don't comply," the other snapped, "you're resisting." "Resisting what?" His voice was soft, dangerous in its calm. "Paperwork you don't understand? Costumes you borrowed?" The first man took a step closer. "Listen, pal, this isn't a debate. You've got 10 minutes to pack a bag. After that, you'll be dragged out." The veteran's eyes narrowed, studying every detail, the nylon straps too clean, radios not even switched on, the way their boots shined like they'd never seen a crime scene. He exhaled slowly. "You boys ever wear a uniform that meant something?" They didn't answer. They didn't need to. The taller one jabbed a finger toward his chest. "You think this is a game? We're giving you a chance. Leave quiet, no trouble. Or stay, and we'll make it ugly." He leaned forward, finally letting his words cut. "If you try, you'll regret it." The man with papers laughed. "Regret? You think anybody's coming to save you? You're alone out here." And that's when the sound came. Engines. Low, deep, controlled. Not loud like motorcycles, not clunky like trucks. 6 black SUVs rolled down the street in formation, tires kissing the asphalt like they had permission from the ground itself. They parked 2 houses away, doors opening in sync. The fake cops froze. 6 men stepped out. Plain clothes. Calm faces. Their walk said everything their clothes didn't. Shoulders square. Eyes scanning. Every step measured. Seals. Real ones. They didn't shout. They didn't run. They didn't need to. The veteran on the porch finally let the faintest smile show. "You were saying?" The impostors stiffened. One lowered his fake clipboard, sweat starting to bead at his temple. The first seal stepped closer, Slow. Problem here? The veteran shook his head. Not anymore. The street went silent. Even the birds stopped. 6 men advanced with the patience of predators who didn't need to prove anything. Their presence alone pulled the air tighter, heavier. The fake cops stiffened, caught between holding their ground and running. Their sunglasses no longer hid the panic flickering in their eyes. One of the SEALs stepped onto the lawn, his voice calm, precise. Let me see your credentials. The taller imposter raised the wrinkled eviction paper like a shield. We're with the HOA task force. Authorized to remove trespassers. The SEAL tilted his head. Task force? Out of what branch? Silence. The veteran crossed his arms, leaning heavier against the doorframe. They don't have a branch. They have a printer. The smaller imposter swallowed, gripping the clipboard tighter. We don't need to answer your questions. Another SEAL chuckled quietly. Wrong answer. One by one, the SEALs closed the gap, circling without rush, cutting off every exit. Their movements were effortless, as if they'd done this dance 100 times on darker streets, in harsher places. The veteran spoke again, voice steady but sharp enough to make the imposters flinch. You came here thinking I was alone. You thought intimidation was enough. But you never asked the one question that matters: who lives here? The tallest SEAL stepped forward, locking eyes with the faker. Now I'll ask again. ID, now. The imposter's hand trembled as he reached for his pocket. The paper slipped. It fluttered to the ground, revealing what it really was, a cheaply made form stamped with a fake seal. The neighbors across the street gasped. Phones lifted higher, capturing everything. One of the SEALs picked up the paper, studied it, and smirked. This isn't worth the ink. He dropped it back at their feet. The imposters froze, caught between fight and flight. But fight wasn't in their bodies anymore. Only fear. The SEAL leader's voice cut the silence. On your knees. Hands on your head. The taller one stammered. You don't have the authority to. The veteran interrupted, stepping forward now. They don't need to scare you. The sheriff's on the way. And when he arrives, you'll be nothing but 3 men with fake vests, counterfeit papers, and a neighborhood full of witnesses. As if on cue, sirens wailed faintly in the distance. Real ones this time. Not rushed, not panicked, measured, inevitable. The imposters cracked. The smaller one dropped the clipboard, knees hitting the grass. The taller hesitated, then followed. Their hands rose, fingers trembling against the sky. The veteran stood tall at the porch rail, watching as truth bent their spines. The SEAL leader looked back at him. You want to say the words? The veteran's eyes didn't blink. He nodded once. Put your hands where I can see them. The imposters obeyed instantly. Moments later, the sheriff's cruiser turned the corner, tires crunching the gravel. Officers stepped out, taking in the scene with raised brows. The SEALs didn't need to explain. The uniforms on the ground and the false papers said everything. The sheriff shook his head, muttering. Another one of these scams. He cuffed the men with real steel, their protests drowned by the click of truth. The veteran stepped down from the porch at last, his son, the SEAL leader, meeting him halfway. They didn't embrace. They didn't need to. A nod was enough. Respect was enough. The sheriff turned to him. Sir, you want to press charges? The veteran glanced at the imposters, now slouched in the cruiser's back seat. He thought about the knock, the lies, the threats on his own porch. He nodded once. Yes. Every charge that sticks. The sheriff tipped his hat. Consider it done. The SEALs lingered only long enough to make sure the cruisers pulled away. Then they loaded back into their SUVs, quiet as they had arrived. No fanfare. No speeches. Just men who knew that strength doesn't need noise. The veteran stood on his porch, arms folded, watching the street settle back into silence. Neighbors stepped out now, clapping, thanking, shaking their heads at the audacity of the imposters. One neighbor whispered, "I almost believed them." The veteran's gaze was sharp. That's why they do it. Lies sound real until you test them. Later that night, he recorded a message. His voice was calm, steady, meant for anyone who might face the same knock someday. If someone shows up in a costume demanding your freedom, remember this: questions aren't crimes. Real authority doesn't hide behind cheap papers or borrowed vests. And silence, calm silence, is stronger than panic. He leaned closer, voice a shade lower. If you believe in truth over intimidation, in real strength over fake noise, subscribe. This is where we tell the stories that remind bullies why fear never wins. He ended the recording. Outside, the street was quiet again. And this time, the quiet meant safety.